A game with hundreds of units and niches makes it difficult to talk about who the best is in reality, and overall it kind of depends on what you think the best would be. Possibly it's an Uber like Dazzly because of her immense power and the fact that she's always useful if you can get her. Or the best can be seen as a key unit that's highly useful through an important part of the game, despite their fall off later. And maybe the unit is the best due to its general utility. Today though, I want to talk about who I think the best contenders are for the best unit in all of Battle Cats. But first, here's a verse from the Bible. 1 Corinthians 4:4. My conscience is clear, but that doesn't prove I'm right. It is the Lord himself who will examine me and decide. Not the best. With something like this, it's helpful to clarify what can't be the best by how I define the best. And while there aren't many categories of units that are basically stopped from competing as the best, these three that I've devised I believe make their classification as such in any serious way unreasonable. Niche. These units are built to fight specific traits, or they have melee level ranges that sometimes hold them back. Barlog is great thanks to his super high damage, but his range sets him back a lot of the time, while someone very different like Sanzo has incredible slowing abilities against floating and angel enemies, assuming you got that talent for him, and that's what makes him great. Though no cats like these can be considered the best in a whole game sense. Within the niche of debuffing floating and angels, Sanzo's your guy. Same with Barlog if you're fighting specific enemies and you can get satisfying hits off. But these aren't the kind of cats you'd bring into just any situation, because they're crafted to deal with specific things. Naturally, this includes critters as well, since critters were only made to fight metals. Timing. A unit's greatness depends majorly on when you get them. For example, if you get someone like Lumina at the start of Into the Future, you'd automatically believe that she's one of the best units that are insanely tough and weak in ability against aliens. Though, if you got her at the tail end of something like COTC, she'd just be a solid anti-alien tanker for primarily alien stages. And these two experiences can make the cat's goodness more vague for different players due to her nature as a legend rare. For me, I'd say that Summoner Saitoro is one of the best cats in the game, but I recognize why. And that's because I got him when I was just starting the Aku realms, and he was integral to me getting Aku Researcher and beating the Jandango stage. If I'd gotten him way after beating the Aku realms, in my opinion would probably be more in line with the general community of Battle Cats. Timing being important doesn't just go for Ubers and legend rares, though it's more important for them than cats of other rarities. For example, if you were to get Dancer Cat's talents as early as possible maxed out, then he'd definitely be one of your best. Though if you had gotten them in UL, then he'd still be good, but not as best worthy anymore. Availability. This is the strictest and probably most controversial category, as I believe a cat has to actually be available for it to be great. This totally eliminates Ubers because while they're all technically possible to get at any time, you can't reasonably go for specific ones due to the chances being so low. It's way different from other rarities because due to the commonality, you probably already have most gacha super rares and rares by the early game. The best cat in the game sure can be Dazzly in your opinion or legend rare, but that entirely depends on a player's luck. Despite their power, I would say that you can't call a cat like this the best, because from player to player, one might get her in EOC, one might get her in UL, and one may never get her. Ultimately, the best cat would be one that you can actually use. Non-gacha options and non-collab super rares and rare gacha cats that have been in the game since it started are way more understandable picks as contenders. What can be the best? First unit has to be useful in a variety of situations. This means that units that can either hit fast or have a nice amount of range or maybe some high movement speed could be within the realm of the best. Next, timing. When you get a unit, they should either be useful for a long amount of time or absurdly useful for an important part of the game. Craze cats like Manic Dragon or Island kind of fall under this category, and so do a lot of Advent cats. Super and normal rare gacha units sort of fall into this as well, but most likely you'd be getting them early game, so they have the advantage of having a lot of plus levels, and you basically always have them. Finally, are you even gonna get this unit? Someone could say specific Ubers or legend rares are the best cats in the game, but does that really matter if not everyone can expect to get them? Not really. It especially applies to powerful collab Ubers like Jupiter King, Buenas, I don't know how to say that, and Saber, or just other collab units like Healer and Kyubi. Their availability is even lower due to them not only being gacha units, but also collab units despite their great abilities. In short, in order to really be the best, you have to be reasonably obtainable, useful for when you're obtainable and even longer afterwards, and usable in a plethora of situations. Here are some contenders for who I think can qualify as the best cats in the game, from specials to super rares. Obligatory mention, Eraser and Crazy Racer, The two erasers being seen as the best is a very common take. They're both very powerful meat shields that are gonna be used on basically every stage from the moment they become equal, and I get it. But I don't think that they can be real contenders for the best in this game because they're meat shields. It's a necessary role that they fill well, though it's not much since they're very replaceable by other meat shields or light tankers. If you really want to do that. Specials, Dancer. If you want a talent Dancer as early as possible, he's going to be one of your best units for the rest of the game. That's been my experience, as he has wave immunity, 330 range, area attack, and after an ancient curse at level 50, a max attack set of 58k damage per hit with an absurd 8.4k DPS, if he can survive. I only say if, because he has one knockback, so effectively he's a kamikaze style mid-ranger that comes in, does crazy damage to everyone, and then dies. And this is basically guaranteed due to that one knockback. Even before an ancient curse with a level 40 dancer and max talents, you'd be dealing 47k damage per hit and 6.8k DPS. We also have to consider the fact that this is all possible to go for right after beating ITF Chapter 3 and getting a user rank of 1600. Very few cats can compare to Dancer's abilities with NP, especially when you get him, and although it takes some investment, it's definitely worth it. Bahamut. Bahamut is your first series legend special cat, and you can get him after beating Empire of Cats Chapter 3. Overall, he's a pretty basic but powerful generalist nuker that functions similarly to Uber's, as he has 450 range, a long force swing, and an incredible 85k damage at just level 30. Throughout early SOL or other stages, you'll definitely be using him because of these great factors. Despite his long force swing, he's still super powerful due to that raw damage alone, and even throughout the game, his 85k damage value and area attacking ability is still pretty crazy if you can get it off effectively against enemies. It's kinda similar to Dancer at maximum abilities, except he does more damage and is made to survive longer. The main issue though is his vulnerability to things like Wave, Surges, LD, and Omni Strike and longer range enemies, both due to his lack of immunities and bad HP at 25k when he's level 30, so usually people don't use him later on. In his final form, he switches from a backlining nuker to a nuking rusher. With 200 range and 60 movement speed, he now deals 93.5k damage from a total of his 3 multi-hits, though his HP is still low at 25k, and this is all just by level 30. It's a great change that helps him fill both common nuker roles for general situations, one where he's a rusher and one where he has more standard backline abilities. Though, as you continue further into the game, specialists start to take more of a center stage for things like UL or just harder stages in general. But still, Bahamut always exists as an option, either as a ranged unit or a rusher, who will definitely do some great damage if you can utilize him correctly. Rares. Cameraman. Cam's known for being great as soon as you true form her. On paper, she just seems like an average spammable anti-floating unit with mid stats and a low speed of 6, though none of this is true. At level 50, Camera gains 15k HP and 2.5k DPS, which is strong for a 540c semi-spammable cat, and it just gets better because her being a common gacha rare pull means that she has plus levels. With mine, for example, I have her at 50 plus 32 with max talents, so she has 27k HP and 4.5k DPS, and that's per each and every one that gets spawned because again, she has 250 range, is cheap, and is pretty spammable. One of her best traits is her survivability. 27k HP with all that investment seems pretty mid, but she also has 4 knockbacks, so it's likely is that weaker hits will knock her back and allow her to reposition with better ease. Her movement speed helps a lot with this at the same time, since she'll never dash into danger since it's an extremely low 6. With her survivability and talent on top of this, she'll get an effective 5 knockbacks. So even if she does face a strike that'll wipe out all of her HP, she'll still be able to reposition. Overall, Camera is a unit with great survivability in general situations, and her strong against floating ability is more of a plus than anything else. Again, for my Cameraman at 50 plus 32 with max talents, for example against floating, she'd be doing 6.7k DPS and have 54.7k HP. Jelly Dumpling. Slime's an adamant cat that you can get after you get Golfer, and at level 30 he has a level 5 wave with 25k damage per wave. This alone is absurdly powerful, as it's a unit that can snipe enemies from basically every relevant area on the map by just hitting a peon. Then his final form gives him 180 range and a level 7 wave, and at level 50 he'd be dealing 40.5k damage per wave. For all purposes, bringing Jelly into any stage is going to help you a lot, as a level 7 wave is no doubt going to hit every relevant enemy and then some with at least 40.5k damage, assuming they aren't hit with multiple waves. 20 movement speed, 180 range, and a cost of 450c is absurd, though the only downside is the fact that he's a kamikaze unit with an abysmal 2.7k HP and 1 knockback at level 50. Courier. No clue what they were thinking when they added this guy to the game. You can get him pretty early as he's the first egg unit, and at just level 30 he has 3.3k DPS. Not too special by itself, but when it's added with his 25 movement speed, 250 standing range, and his unique LD range of 170 through 450, things get kind of crazy as Courier is at least gonna rush in, deal some alright damage to probably all relevant enemies real quick with some defense and then die. On top of this though, he deals massive damage against red enemies, so effectively against them, he'd be doing 13.2k DPS, and versus the red bird, his Behemoth Slayer lets him do 33k DPS against him. This makes that boss a total joke once you get him, but even against most reds with his 13.2k DPS in weird range, he's gonna melt them. By level 50 he becomes better in general situations as he gains a natural damage of 11k and a natural DPS of 5.2k. On paper it sounds alright, but in practice it's genuinely insane how versatile, unique, and powerful Courier actually is, as nobody in the game works similarly to him, but he continues to be useful in just about all situations while also being very easy to unlock. Super rares. Can. There's a reason why Can is known as a mini Barlock, as at just level 50 without talents, she deals 60k damage and has 60k HP with 5 knockbacks. It's more likely than not that she'll survive for a while thanks to this knockback count, and with this she'll be able to deal this damage multiple times. Things get crazier with talents since she's a stat-based unit. Just with movement speed, she becomes a rusher with 21 speed, and she gains double bounty, which is important because it's highly likely that she'll finish off a boss or kill important annoying enemies and get you tons of money. With talents at level 50, she'd do 72k damage per hit or 11k DPS with 72k HP or 14.5k HP per her 5 knockbacks. She's a simple, fast, high damaging single target stat based unit with a pretty fast cooldown and a cost of 675, and all this makes her great. Fishman. Fishman, in my opinion, is the best general rusher both because of how early you get him and his general usefulness throughout the whole game. Even before you true form him, his damage and speed is incredible, as he fills out the need for a powerful rusher well before you get later options like Bullet Train or Awaken Bahamut. Even then, after you get his true form, the talents he gains makes him so much better. With them, he goes from 36 to 46 speed, and his already powerful single target damage is useful even outside of his massive damage against floating. If we were to use my 50 plus 15 Fishman for example with a max attack stat, he does 35k damage per hit and an 8.8k DPS. Compared to Bullet Train at level 50, Bullet does 47k damage per hit, but he has a longer recharge time and 1 knockback, and he costs slightly more. So most of the time, Bullet Train will deal less damage than Fish. For these reasons, if I need a rusher in a stage, I'm going to be choosing Fish first over any of the other similar options. The best. Honorable mentions are Courier, Slime, and Dancer. Courier because of his uniquely powerful piercing abilities and spam ability, Slime because of his sniping ability, and Dancer due to his high damage, area attack, comfortable range, and availability, as you'll be able to get him as soon as talents are available. Though, for the best, I'd say that given his usefulness, by the time you're guaranteed to obtain him, his great range and absurd damage, and his final form, which is seen by most, is their powerful go-to rusher for when they want to get into a blind spot or clear a stage quickly. Bahamut is the best cat in the game. He's great as soon as you finish EOC until forever, basically. And even then, at best, he's more so replaced by specialists rather than regarded as useless outside of stages where he'd be hit easily by either waves or surges. He can be used on 4-star stages as well, and he serves 2 super important roles, one as a rusher and one as a backliner. Bahamut is a highly available cat as everyone who gets past EOC Chapter 3 will get him. He's powerful in plenty of general situations, and when you get him, he will be a useful cat for an extremely long amount of time. For all these reasons, Bahamut is the best cat in the entire game. If you think that someone else is, like maybe an Uber, or if you think Slime is better for example, then go for it in the comments. Before I go though, since this video was kinda long, here's another verse from the Bible. It's one to really think about for all of us Christians. 1 Corinthians 1:10. I appeal to you, dear brothers and sisters, by the authority of our Lord Jesus Christ, live in harmony with each other. Let there be no divisions in the church. Rather be of one mind, united in thought and purpose. I hope you all enjoyed this one. Be sure to like the video, share it, and subscribe, and also become a member if you want. Watch the next one and all of my previous ones, and goodbye.